Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me for this special Super Bowl halftime segment of the Back to the Bible broadcast. I see we got several in the chat already. It's good to see Brother Rob and Book, Chapter, and Verse program in the chat this evening, and our brother Mitch from Burlington, North Carolina, tuning in for this short segment of what we're going to be doing this evening. Tonight, the information is going to be a bit shocking, probably just as much as the football game is right now. I wasn't expecting to see the Eagles up on the Chiefs as high as they are. But what we're going to be doing tonight with this halftime segment is we're going to be dissecting some of the information that is coming out of the work in Virginia. And that is a work that I used to be involved in before I had to leave Virginia with my wife and had to withdraw from my family and the brethren there that I worked majority of my preaching career as was with those brethren. So what I'm doing tonight, I'm in no way joyous, if I can use that word since it's been a theme for our Bible study time. I'm not in any way joyous or relishing the fact that I have to present this kind of information. And in fact, I want to say a quick thank you to our friend of the broadcast, JC, for sending me some messages and encouraging me to handle this situation in the way that we're going to deal with it tonight. And I will admit to our friend JC, I was not originally planning on going this route. I was going to be extremely harsh, critical, and probably a bit too emotional in dealing with the information at first. But in listening or reading the messages that JC sent, it reminded me of a quote from John Shannon in one of his sermons, and how that the gospel should be used to deliver and not to destroy. So tonight, with this information, it is not my desire to trying to destroy my family. If anything is going to be their downfall, if anything is going to end up destroying them, it's going to be their own sins. And the God of all the earth is going to do what is right. But what we're going to be doing with this broadcast is what we do with all the other broadcasts in dealing with whether it's denominational information or information from our own brethren. It's going to be a pointing out and dealing with sins that need to be repented of. And that is the aim of what we're wanting to do tonight. So, what this is all about. I had a handful of brethren reach out to me, and one individual, and most of the messages were on this same vein, and they were asking, can you please explain what this is all about? And how it was that my dad, Johnny Robertson, was in Philadelphia in Geno Jennings' church, and he was up there praising Geno, referring to him as pastor, allowing them to refer to him as brother, and even some strange things coming out of this video, specifically right here. In this video, Mr. Jennings said something that insinuated that my dad in the Church of Christ there in Virginia was baptizing in the same form or in the same fashion that Mr. Geno is involved in baptizing. But if you know Mr. Geno Jennings, you know that he's a one in the Godhead and that he believes in Jesus only, and that the formula, if you will, for baptism in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit is not, in fact, accurate, but you just need to baptize in the name of Jesus, in the name of the Lord. And for Mr. Geno to insinuate that he and Johnny are on the same plane there on that was very disturbing for me to hear as well. But I want to start by saying I don't know what's going on. I have no affiliation with that work anymore. I've withdrawn my fellowship. I do not watch their broadcasts. I do not read their bulletins. It's just every once in a while when something like this, something really crazy ends up happening, that brethren end up sending me the information. So on the outset, I have no idea what they're up to. However, in listening to some of the information, listening to this video of Johnny's speech, if you will, while he was there in Philadelphia, listening to this video of Mr. Jennings talk about Johnny Robertson being up there, and then watching the video from February the 2nd of this year, where Johnny Robertson is on his broadcast, What Does the Bible Say?, talking about his appearance up there and trying to give an explanation to other people that were rightfully questioning them on what in the world is going on, that you're up here trying to join in league and you're trying to hold hands with this denominational preacher so as to get work done. My first thoughts on this is that this is purely a publicity stunt. For 5 to 7 minutes in this video from February the 2nd, you have Johnny Robertson going through and doing a count of all the views that his video was getting, that Gino Jennings' video was getting, and all the host of other individuals that are in association with Gino Jennings and that follow Gino Jennings, and just the millions of views that his going up there ended up bringing about. So, and all throughout his discourse on this video also, you just have him bringing up time and time again all the attention that is being brought out because of what he did to go up there and say the things that he said to Mr. Jennings. And it was also interesting how it was that even in this video, with people that were questioning him, he would pretty regularly ridicule people for even questioning and insinuating about what he was actually involved in doing. And that's a problem for a future slide that's coming up. So when I'm viewing this, it is a situation that he's just trying to get attention. He was saying it himself all throughout the video, counting the views, and once again, trying to fall back on all the things that they are involved in doing so as to have eyes be placed on them. So it sounds very much like what Jesus warns about and condemns in Matthew chapter 6, beginning in verse 1, that we are to take heed that you do not your alms before men to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou dost thine alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. If you're needing to apologize to Mr. Jennings, why do it in front of cameras? Do it in front of his congregation. This really reeks of what you see going on in the political realm when there's a natural disaster or what have you, and then the president or whoever has to fly down there for a photo op. If you're needing to apologize, then just apologize. So why go through all of this, cause up all this stir, and even then you try to give an explanation and it's not a proper explanation. There is no real accurate defense of what he's involved in doing. And so Mitch is saying in the chat that he, at one time, according to what Mitch is telling, Johnny Robertson told me himself people used to call him Johnny Bright Lights. Well, it's very apparent that that's what their work has become. Even after things fell apart with me being there in April of 2020, when people would question them on the things that they were doing about that situation, all they would do is try to point people back to, look at what we're doing. See all the attention that we have? People know our names. Do the denominational preachers in your town even know your preacher's name? And it's people are left wondering, what does that have to do with the question that I asked about this situation going on with you and Micah? Now here's this situation with he and Gino. People are looking for scriptural explanation, and all he's falling back to is just look at the views. Look at what we're doing, as though that's going to be a proper covering for this, for this bad behavior that they're now involved in. And then as you have people continuing to defend a truly indefensible position, this is from that video. And this is in the comment section from their YouTube channel. And this is actually Joey Nichols, a member there of the Martinsville congregation. And he says, to all the doomsayers and brethren ready to throw another brother under the bus at the drop of a hat, what will you say if Johnny converts Gino to the truth? Does anyone have any experience strategizing, quote, a game at this level? It would be unfathomable for your preacher to even end up in the same orbit as Gino to have any influence. Number one, when this idea of what if Johnny converts Gino to the truth, according to those videos, it sounded like Johnny was already in their camp. It sounded like Gino had converted Johnny. So where this is coming from, I'm not sure. And as far as it coming down to, does anyone have any experience in strategizing? This is not good strategy. Even going back to the 2020 situation with myself and my wife and the things that were going on there that we're going to touch on here very briefly in just a moment, that was not good strategizing on the part of my dad and my little brother, that they're going to go public with not a so-called dispute, a real dispute, and then think nobody's going to raise questions. And then as people began to question them, they continued to try and beat people back with the same type of routine that we were finding with that video from February the 2nd. Who am I to have to explain myself to you? Are you on the same level that I'm working on? Does anyone have any experience strategizing? See, all of this is just Johnny's way up here. Everybody's a bunch of peons, and you don't even have to go too far from the comment section to see Johnny himself involved in that kind of discourse. Here's a person, this is a different video where I believe this is actually coming from the closed door meeting that Johnny had with Gino Jennings. And one person asked him, was this secretly recorded, Mr. Robertson? Then all he replies is CCT. Then the question, why? Then the person responds, what do you mean, why? I'm asking, did you secretly record Pastor Jennings without him knowing? Then the response, what do you mean questioning me? I don't answer to anyone on YouTube. That's really good strategizing. You do something that you really can't defend, and then when you're called to defend it, all you do is beat people down, and then you have the membership inside of Martinsville praising you as a great strategist. This has been going on the whole entire time, and we continue to see the hypocrisy. This is a comment that was made from his Facebook where he is, again, ridiculing different people for even questioning him for what he's involved in doing. And somebody brings up a very good point of the hypocrisy of Johnny to go up here and to hold hands with Gino Jennings while he condemns the rest of the churches of Christ for their lectureships and their gospel meetings and all these different areas where they're brought into fellowship with all these liberal brethren. Well, how does Johnny go into defending that? He says, thanks to John Nason for the reminder. B.J. Clark hiding over in the corner at gospel meeting at C Street, Elizabethton, Tennessee. We just came by to show B.J. some lectureships advertising him alongside of known false teachers such as Stafford North of Oklahoma Christian University. OCU commonly uses Abilene University personalities as well as Pepperdine University. B.J. just felt more comfortable pretending that we were not 15 feet away from him. By the way, those were elders that were deciding if the information should be looked at, so on and so forth. How is this behavior any different than what he's condemning B.J. Clark for doing? You have brethren calling you, texting you, leaving comments in your chat, asking for responses, and all you can do is, who are you to question me? And then you want to turn around and ridicule brethren that are involved in that kind of activity. Friends, there are some major problems coming out of the work there in Martinsville, Virginia. And then to ridicule B.J. Clark and other brethren for being on lectureships with false teachers such as Stafford North. And then this is a section on their YouTube channel where you have Caleb sitting down with different members, different brethren of the Church of Christ that have all been withdrawn from or that they would view as being wayward false teachers. This one right here is Rubel Shelley. If you're a member of the Lord's Church, member of the Church of Christ, you know that the name Rubel Shelley is anathema. He's one of the biggest liberals. If there was, a label to be put on someone, he would hold that title. And yet here's Caleb sitting down in this interview. Now, I've never watched the interview, but I've talked to people that have watched the interview. They were not happy with the interview. They were expecting some type of discourse so as to rebuke, reprove, correct Rubel Shelley and the errors and the damage that he has done to the Lord's church, but there was nothing like that. You have Caleb sitting down with Alan Hires, another one they would view as a false teacher. F. LaGard Smith is another one that they have commonly ridiculed on their their shows and their episodes that they're putting on. Friends, the hypocrisy, the strategizing, if you will, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing a lot of strategy going into how they're going about in trying to defend themselves in this position. So what is actually going on here is just a bunch of smoke and mirrors. It's a distraction from what's going on over here by sleight of hand that's going on over here, over and over again. And this kind of activity this is not the first time that you find this kind of handling by Johnny. So while he's up there in Philadelphia and he's wanting to be all soft and nice with Gino, and he's tipping the hat, saying he's one of the greatest preachers that he's ever heard, and all these kind of things. Well, then how would you expect for Johnny to treat his own brethren? But that's how he's treating somebody over here that's in a denomination. Then I suppose you might be thinking, well, I'm sure he treats his own brethren pretty well. Well, here's a phone call from 2020 when all the things were falling apart there in Virginia with me and my family. And he calls up one of the members, Eugene Edwards, to let me hear that Eugene Edwards has now gone back on his word that he had originally told me that he was not going to go back to 823 Starland Avenue until Johnny had repented for the problems that he had caused. But he had then flipped after talking to Johnny. Listen to how Johnny deals with another brother and a brother that's older than him there in the Martinsville congregation.
Eugene, Micah does not believe that you are going to be at 823 Starling Avenue with us Sunday and not with him. And I'm standing here with him. Would you verify that for me?
Well, I've talked to... Hold on a minute.
Now, Eugene, I'm only asking you one thing.
Yeah. I'm going to be at Starling Avenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, I want some clarification.
That's it.
Then,
Did you hear how I gave him an ultimatum, Micah? This is men talking. You don't give men ultimatums. I just gave him an ultimatum, and what did he do?
Johnny's been pushing people around ever since 2020. So while individuals are sitting here raising their hands and trying to say, what's going on? What's with all this behavior, this radical behavior? Friends, I've been trying to point this out to you since 2020. Things are not well in the Martinsville work. Things are not well with Johnny Robertson and with Caleb Robertson. Now, when we move forward in this presentation, I have a serious question and a serious dilemma on my hands. And watching this information with, this video with Gino Jennings, I want to know, where's my apology? And where's the apology to my wife and the apology to other brethren that have been mistreated by Johnny and by Caleb since 2020? Now, here's why I'm raising this question. If you've not seen it already, then we'll let you see it here.
People that know me will tell you.
Start it over so you can see what's going on here.
People that know me will tell you that when Johnny makes a mistake, he tries to correct it. And I have made a mistake.
Our problem here. Here's our problem. We're actually having to deal with one of our own, not just that it happens to be my own son, it's one of the preachers that works in our area, and he's involved in creating this division as well. And as a result of them coaching him, he basically thinks that he could come in this morning and do something different than what everybody else who has repented did. Basically thinks that he could come in this morning and do something different than what everybody else who has repented did. Basically.
Now, this is what I mean about smoke and mirrors. When all of this started on April 19th of 2020, I was labeled a heretic. Now, if you watched this, now here's the interesting thing. You can no longer find this video on their YouTube channel. They took it down. I still have a copy of it. I downloaded it. They called me a heretic, but they never said what for. And brethren that tried to call them up and tried to ask them, what exactly did Micah do? Guess what they were met with? Who are you to question me? Pushing people around, being super aggressive towards brethren that care about the work. These are not enemies. These are people that were supporters of the work. One brother in Missouri, he ended up calling me up shortly after he tried to talk to Caleb about it. He was sending Caleb funds. He was sending Caleb money. And he called Caleb up to find out what was going on. And the response was, what kind of work are you involved in? We're up here doing this, doing A, B, C, D. What are you doing over there in Missouri? And who are you to question us? Friends, these are the kind of people that you're dealing with. So for Johnny to stand up there with Gino Jennings and apologize that he didn't properly love Gino and so on and so forth, I would argue that he still doesn't love Gino based upon how he continues to treat everybody else. This is purely for show. This is just a publicity stunt. So then once they started getting pressure from other brethren, then it quickly turned into, well, Micah just wasn't happy with the work. He wasn't working as hard as the rest of us, so on and so forth. Then I get a call from a preacher in Kentucky, and he tells me that he talked to Johnny, and Johnny said that my problem was with another brother there, Ian, that was recently moved there from California. You see how this continues to digress and how this grows from how it originally was? Starts out, I'm a heretic, and then as people go along with it and they realize they're not gaining any ground, it's, well, he just wasn't happy. Well, it's actually he had an issue with this person, so on and so forth. Friends, you should be picking up on the problem here. There is a great amount of deception. There's a great amount of dishonesty coming out of this work and coming out of this congregation. Then, just to further illustrate how things are really going on there at the Martinsville congregation, how they are all being treated, that a lot of people have this image of Johnny that, oh, he's this great person. He really cares about people. Well, let's listen to this phone call from a sister that ended up leaving the Martinsville congregation shortly after my wife and I did, and Mark and Angie Washburn ended up leaving the congregation there.
Any sense?
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah. But I was going to ask, and, I told Clark, it's been a process. I knew I was there. Clark was not there that Sunday. So he's kind of not wanted to hear all this stuff because he wasn't there. He didn't see it. And it's been a process with Clark. And he was just getting, and a lot of people are just getting one side, and they weren't getting your side. They weren't allowed to get your side.
So a lot of people were hearing myself, and at the time, my father-in-law and others raise that alarm that why is it that nobody is being allowed? Why is it that Johnny and them are not allowing Micah to give his side? And a lot of people weren't wanting to believe it. No, there's no way that's going on in the Martinsville congregation. That is coming from the inside. That was somebody that was there at least 2 months after I had left. And there she is admitting for all of you to hear, yeah, we weren't allowed to look into this. We were not allowed to contact Micah so as to get his side on how everything was playing out. Mitch in the comments is saying that he called the men in Danville and he called the Martinsville congregation and he got the same answer. The answer was, well, Micah came to me with a problem and I told him I wasn't getting involved. And that was the response, for example, coming from Mark McMinnis, somebody that I worked very closely with in the Danville congregation. We did television broadcasts together. We were co-hosts together. Went and investigated and I guess you could say picked on to a small degree the Baptist preachers and different ones that we went around town in interviewing. That's what majority of the time that was myself and Mark. And then I call him up so as to get his help. Now, part of the reason why I called Mark up is because on April 19th, when Johnny caused the problem that he caused at the Martinsville congregation that Sunday morning, when he returned to the Martinsville building and found some of us talking about what he did and what we were going to do about it, one of the questions that I asked him was, well, did you tell anybody at the Danville congregation what was going on? His response was no. Well, I called Mark the next day, Mark McMinnis, and I asked him, Mark, do you know anything about what was going on at the Martinsville congregation? And he began to tell me. So right there, Johnny lied when he was flat out asked, did you talk to anybody at the Danville congregation? And he said no. And it's on recording. It's on the record. So friends, when Johnny is up there and he's going through this sappy, emotional display that he's putting on with Mr. Jennings, I do not see it as sincere. Because if he was really wanting to bury hatchets and really fix problems that are going on, you would think the first one he'd want to do is with his firstborn son. To this day, I have yet to receive an apology for him lying against me, making false accusations, all the things that he was involved in doing during that span of time with 2020. No apology to my wife. You might be saying, well, what apology could he possibly, owe to your wife? And so, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. And so again, we just have all these different shows that are going on. Publicity stunts. He wanted to go to Philadelphia and apologize to Gino. Caleb ends up doing something with Don Blackwell where he flat out misinterprets and misquotes what Don Blackwell said. Well, there's an apology video. Caleb apologizes to Don Blackwell while they still keep the original video up where they misquote him. Why haven't I been reached out to so as to get an apology for all the wrongs that they'd done against me? Our brother Mitch, once more, commenting on their YouTube channel, and I believe these comments were actually removed. Mitch says he never apologized to all the brethren he hurt, lied to, publicly lied about. I'll be waiting on that call, which will never come along with the other brethren. Johnny then replies, I really victimized you. Caleb and I drove from Virginia to Orlando on Wednesday to apologize to an elder. All these apologies going out all over the place. But I'm still out here without one. And I would argue these things are not genuine. They are realizing now there is some strategy here in that they are recognizing, okay, they're doing some things that could really do some damage. This apology to an elder down in Florida is an apology because they ended up losing support from that congregation. And I know this because I spoke to the preacher who is also one of the elders down there at that congregation. Johnny and Caleb went off on a rampage on them because of them sending some of their members to polishing the pulpit. I don't know why they'd be so upset about that. If Dad can go up to Gino Jennings' church and join hands, with him so as to get work done. But this is a major problem. These things are not sincere. And here's what the issue is. What took place that Sunday, April the 12th in 2020? Here's text messages from Johnny to me. You're going to experience dissimulation this morning. I'm not going to be there at all. Your cups are in the top office where I used to have my office. You can put them back out. Here Johnny is. And he's admitting through text message, again, poor strategy to have things down in writing, as to the problem that he caused. And it was over these Lord's Supper elements that he was not informed that we were going to use. He didn't like that we were using it because he saw it as a weakness. He didn't like some of the brethren in the assembly wearing masks because of how it looked. Never apologized to anybody for what he did here in trying to hide those elements, for his being upset that we even tried to use those elements. And then what's interesting is another brother, Tony Wood, that was a part of the Martinsville congregation, and he was after I had left. He left about a month after I did, and the reason why he left was because Johnny ended up using those same elements that he said it was a sin for me and the other brethren to bring out. And he did not in any way sit down with the brethren and ask them. He did not have a men's meeting with them to ask, to make sure this was okay for him to do. He just simply did it. There's all this going around and doing these other things so as to try to gain some clout, to make it appear as though they're not as bad as what they really are. Now, the reason why I have Holger Neubauer's picture up here is because I talked to Holger it was about 2 years ago, I believe it was. And in that conversation, we got on this topic for a little bit. And in the conversation, Brother Holger ended up saying to me that he chastised Johnny a little bit for causing the disruption that he did over the Lord's Supper elements. And Holger tells me that according to him, Johnny admitted to him on the phone, well, yeah, that was a mistake. I've never heard that. Why is it that all these other people are hearing these things that Johnny is supposedly saying, but he's not come to me? And you heard him in the video. If anybody knows anything about Johnny, when he makes a mistake, he fixes it. He's not fixed this mistake. And I doubt that he will, because of how much trouble he's actually brought on himself because of it. This is a text message from my nephew, Tanner, and this is a text to my wife. He's not texting me. He's texting these things to my wife. Now, friends, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because there's been some talk from a brother down in Georgia that's been in communication with my family in Virginia. And he said to me recently that Johnny said to him, look, anytime that Micah wants to come back, he can. Well, let's just see if we get that kind of idea from these text messages from my nephew, in which, granted, my nephew was not sending these things on his own volition. He was being coached. So notice these text messages. My nephew says, Christina, you and Micah are completely alone right now. And it's all because of Micah's pride and not being able to control his hatred for Johnny and Caleb. So now we've grown from it just being, well, Micah's a heretic and he's causing division, and that, well, Micah actually has hatred for Johnny and Caleb. Not only did he cut Johnny's support, he cut his own support, which was not true. Not only did he cut his own support, Johnny's support, he cut Lori's support. Let's see. Oh, did I misread that? Oh, he cut his own support. Not only did he cut Johnny's support, he cut Lori's support in trying to knock Johnny's legs out from under him. He cut his own throat. Yet all the same, Johnny will be okay. He doesn't need Portland, which, again, we're talking about this smoke and mirrors issue. In that February 2nd video that he was hosting, he's continuously talking about more support that he's lost and how he's having to sell his house, so on and so forth. That has gone on for years since all of this took place. He's been trying to promote to people, oh no, everything is fine. Everything's good here. Doesn't really sound like it from what he's actually saying now. So he says, yet all the same, John will be okay. He doesn't need Portland. Can the same be said for Micah? Can Micah stand to lose Martinsville and Portland at once? Micah cannot make it without Johnny or Caleb. Friends, brethren, this is the kind of stuff that was being said that you have no idea about. Micah's not going to make it without Johnny and Caleb, and he knows that. If not for them, Martinsville would be dead right now. Micah doesn't even know how to set up his own car insurance without calling Johnny up in the middle of all this. Friends, I've got 3 cars of my own. They all have insurance. More deception, more lies, more manipulation. Micah will never be allowed to work with any of them again, even if he does repent for everything he did. This is how ugly it got and how ugly it still is. This is not a good group. This is not a godly group. There are some serious problems going on here. So why go do that with Geno Jennings? Because they're trying to save face. His only options are to get a secular job, which he won't like any better, or go somewhere, which he won't like any better, or go be with your family, which he won't like any better. Everyone knows Micah didn't put forth the effort in his job and that he didn't like it, so on and so forth. So while they were trying to present to you, oh, no, so that's another angle to this. Well, this is just a Paul and Barnabas split. Paul and Barnabas, there was a great contention between them, and one had to go this way and another had to go another way, but they were still in fellowship. Everything was fine. Does that sound like what this is? Or does it not sound like there is some real venom coming from that side of the family? This is the kind of stuff that was being said about me to my wife, trying to tear her down. You're all alone. No, we weren't. As far as not getting along with her family, we went to stay with her family, and now the majority of her family is living with us in Montana. He's going to go somewhere and not be happy. He won't like it to go, let's see, where did he say that? Never be allowed, so on and so forth. His only options are to get a secular job. Hey, I drive school bus. I'm pretty happy with that. Go somewhere in which you won't like any better. I'm out here in Montana having the time of my life. I love this area. Love being here. The brethren that we're here working with are good brethren. It hasn't been, what's the word? It hasn't been easy breezy the whole time that we've been here, but we're working on that. Things are just fine, but here they are spouting out this thing, trying to lay out deceit, trying to tear everybody down, trying to make them feel lesser than what they actually are. And in the midst of all of this, you have also, let's go to another clip here. While Johnny was up there at Gino Jennings' church, let's see here. Yeah, here's this clip.
And I'm in a bit of a despair now. I'm a hiss and a byword in the Church of Christ. The Church of Christ preachers have been instructed to lock the door if my son and I come. So many places I go, can't worship with them.
Woe is me. They lock the doors on us. Well, seems like I remember a similar situation
Any sense?
of that taking place
I
there in
understand.
Martinsville, Virginia. Let's see what happens. Let's see. Let me try to find
I
it.
was going to ask, and
Oh, and I forgot to add it to the playlist. Give me just a moment here. That's one of the problems when you're doing live stuff and you got all these different moving pieces. Here we go. So there was Johnny telling you a sob story because members of the church are locking doors when he and Caleb show up. Well, let's see where they learned that from.
Let's show the doors again. They have got locks on the doors, and he says that he's locking out or trying to secure the building from maybe the building from maybe some undesirables.
You have authorized personnel.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of any kind of impromptu changes that could take place, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
In today's environment, churches are changing like property owners.
All right, how about this? Do you think some people might be taking advantage of the virus?
Oh, yeah. You talking about church people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In what ways?
Well, if there was, let's say, in some churches, I'm not talking about with us, but I'm just saying in a church where there was already somebody that was trying to get the upper hand.
So once again, smoke and mirrors. He never came flat out and said why they changed the locks, why they locked the doors, and they actually changed the locks on the back doors. It was to keep me out. And then he wants to go to Gino Jennings' church and tell you a sad, sad story of how, well, brethren see me coming and they lock the doors. Seems like I read in a book somewhere, you reap what you sow. And I'm not saying that to be belligerent or to be unkind. That's just the way things go. That's what Jesus himself is laying out. So what is at the heart of this when we're considering all these things that have been taking place? How can we possibly put some reason to an unreasonable situation? Friends, at the heart of this is the attempted suicide. He brought it up when he was up there in Philadelphia with Gino Jennings, but he did not give you any details because he doesn't want you to know the details. Johnny has been mixing alcohol with his pain pills for years. Now, he tried to tell Holger that he tried to use his sleeping pills. That was a lie. And I have it all recorded of the conversation we had after he tried to take his life. He was trying to overdose on his pain pills. And he had been on those pills for years while deceiving me and the other brethren of the congregation while he was drinking his alcohol. Caleb knew about it. That's on tape. My mom knew about it. That's on tape. My sister knew about it. That's on tape. And they allow these things to go on. Johnny is no longer fit for leadership. His mind is gone. Now, you might not be as persuaded in that, that idea by you're watching him on his broadcasts. But if you watch him on his broadcast now compared to how he used to be, you can tell there's a huge difference. That is not the same Johnny. And with what happened in 2020 and how he reacted towards me, should have been a major red flag of, well, this is not rational behavior. And this is the reason why. He has so corrupted his mind with these pills, he's not the same person. But then also, what's deeper than the attempted suicide is Caleb and realized eschatology, or the 80-70 doctrine. Caleb no longer believes in a future return of the Christ or of a future judgment. As quick proof of that, and we'll go through this and then we'll bring this to a close. These are Facebook messages between myself and Johnny coming from July of 2017. And I ask him, so you say start Corinthians class Sunday. He says if you think that is going to help, you can present evidence against 80-70 without everyone getting why. But I don't know if I want to go through this. 31 years of intense warfare is about to get me down. Then he says, this is in the same day, you need to disconnect yourself from me, Micah. I have feelings that are very different from what you feel. I cannot stand Holger's arrogance and Caleb's pretension. So while they give a presentation now that, oh yeah, they're the best of friends and they're the best of coworkers, this is the kind of stuff that was being said about Caleb behind the scenes. And I'm sure he was saying all kinds of nasty things about me to Caleb. You're going to have to distance yourself from all these past feelings. He says, I'm developing a hatred for Caleb that will poison your mind. So then we go down here a little bit further to November 3rd through the 9th, 2017. From Johnny, Micah, I'm about to send you a text from Caleb on 1 Corinthians 15. First message. And now, O Lord, my God, thou hast made thy servant king instead of David, my father, and I am but a little child. I know not how to go out or come in. 1 Kings 3:6. I had no clue where he was going. Next text. I've been teaching 1 Corinthians in Danville, and we're coming up on chapter 15. I would not have a problem letting someone else teach it. Now, why would he want somebody else to teach 1 Corinthians 15? Well, if you know anything about 80-70 doctrine, 1 Corinthians 15 is a hot spot for them. They spiritualize everything. So then I ask, is that all? Johnny says, yeah. Johnny says, I knew this was coming, or at least possibly coming. I said to him earlier, the thing about a hobby is you think you answered everyone's arguments, but the fact is no one is putting arguments out there because no one is thinking about this all the time. Very surprising how fast someone can answer you once they begin trying. Question is, will you be able to humbly look at another view? Then he says, I did not know he was going to send me that text. Then we go through more conversation of me actually sitting in on his 1 Corinthians class and 1 Corinthians chapter 15. And you can see here, my text to Johnny, he tried to spiritualize everything. Well, you might be saying to yourself, well, this is just conversation between you and Johnny. Do you have anything actually from Caleb? Well, in fact, I do. This is Facebook messages from myself and Caleb, May 13th, 2017. So you're saying 1 Corinthians 15 is 80-70. Caleb, I'm saying in that section for Paul to quote those two passages has zero to do with a bodily resurrection. But in 1 Corinthians 15:17 points backwards to cross, not looking forward, so the whole chapter cannot be 80-70. He goes on to say, if you're busy with your Sunday class or whatever, don't worry about 1 Corinthians 15 right now. Well, why would he say that I'm busy if their whole argument was, well, Micah really wasn't putting in the kind of effort that he should have been? But that's beside the point. My response, I don't get your point. Well, around verse 17, nobody would be thinking 80-70 in a discussion about Jesus coming out of the grave and our resurrection. But in some way, I think 80-70 is going to fit into it because Paul using Isaiah 25:8 and Hosea 13:14. Now, friends, that kind of information is just unget-overable. And this is at the heart of why they had to get rid of me in 2020. I was not going to cover for Johnny's sins in drinking and abusing his medication. Not only did my family know about it, Michael Shank, the author of Muscle and a Shovel, he knew about it, did nothing about it. Seems like there was somebody else that was also involved in knowing that, but I can't place it right now. You had all these people that knew about these things that were going on, and they did nothing to get my dad the kind of help that he needed. I was not going to sit by and just to continue to allow him to go down this track. So I took it to the brethren because he was not listening to the family, and you saw what the mentality was from the text from my nephew. Micah's just trying to destroy him. Micah just hates Johnny and Caleb. That's not what this is about. And to this day, as far as I know, Johnny has never gotten help for his pill abuse, for his pill addiction. And to quote one brother that knew about it and confronted my dad about it and knew about the kind of pills he was taking, I called that brother up in 2020 and I asked him, I said, is there, what do you know about his recovery and so on and so forth? And he said, as far as I know, he's not been in any recovery. And I asked him, well, can he actually recover by himself? And his words to me were, Micah, the only way that your dad could get off of those pills by himself is if he were Superman. And even now, as I'm here in Montana, I'm dealing with people in recovery. Meth, cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, all that kind of stuff. And guess what? Every single one of them is saying, you're not going to get through it alone. They have to acknowledge that they need help and they have to go and get help. And as we tried to push my dad to go get help, he pushed against us. And you see to the degree that he pushed against me. Falsely calling me a heretic, making false accusations about my feelings towards them, and people are just scratching their head and trying to figure out, I cannot understand why all of this is going on. This is the reason why it's going on. This is the kind of sin that's going on in the Martinsville work, and they're not wanting anybody to get close to it. They're doing everything they can to cover it up. I'm not bringing this out just so as to air dirty laundry. This is no different than as we're dealing with Dr. Nace or Foursquare or anybody else, any denominational group here in town. People need to know about what's really being taught, the implications of it, the dangers of it. This is information that's going to end up leading people astray and causing them to lose their souls. So in closing, regardless of their quote unquote good work, they need to repent. And brethren, Romans 16:17 needs to come into play. Paul wrote and said, now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause division and offenses contrary to the doctrine which ye have learned, and avoid them. For they that are such serve not our Lord Jesus Christ, but their own belly, and by good words and fair speeches deceive the hearts of the simple. Now, I'm not trying to say that a bunch of you out there are simple, but I would say that your hearts have been deceived. And that a lot of people have a lot of emotional connection to the work in Virginia. And you've allowed that to get in the way of what you're needing to do scripturally. You're not needing to support them. You're not needing to back them. Anything you need to mark and avoid, and you need to call on them to repent. You need to flood them with calls. If you're going up there and apologizing to Gino, you need to apologize to Micah. And everybody else that tried to stand up to you for what you were doing, and you just continuously beat them down. So that we can see something good come out of this, which I will say, a lot of good has come out of it. For them to say that I wouldn't be happy anywhere else and that I wouldn't be able to make it without them. I mean, how arrogant do you have to be to think that a work is just going to crumble if you're not there? As I said, my wife and I are out here in Montana now, and we are having the best time. And it's because of brethren that investigated, that looked into this information. I cannot praise the Portland elders enough, even though Johnny was wanting to run them through the mud. And so for Johnny to try to put blame on anybody for the support that he lost, and he has nobody to blame but himself. His rudeness, his arrogance, and not allowing these brethren that have been with him, involved in the work with him and for years, and they come along and they try to help, and Johnny just tore into them. but they continue to help us. And just not enough good things to say about those brethren helping us to get here, other brethren that were involved in helping us, God helping us to be out here. And now we're out here with brethren that have a real deep desire to want to know more about this book, and not only know more about it, but to live it out, to practice it. And all of that came out of what took place in Virginia. So I'm not wanting anybody to think that this is a rally around Micah, so on and so forth. Nope. We are doing just fine. What this is to once again bring to light the deep issues and the real problems that are going on there, and the correction and the help that those brethren need, so as to bring them to repentance. Well, thought it was only going to be 30 minutes to match the halftime. I see the players are already back out on the field. So we'll close this segment here. Appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. For everybody that's involved in the chat, if you have any more questions about this, I can try to make some time to talk about it. This is not something that I spend my time thinking about and trying to put this information together. Having to go back through and read through those text messages again and listening to those conversations again, it did not make me feel good. And it was one of those things I have them, but I'm not just sitting around listening to them all the time and dwelling on it 24/7. But if it is something that you're wanting more information on, so as to help you make a better, proper, and wise decision on what's needing to be done, then you can contact me with the information that we'll show you here in just a moment. So thank you everybody for watching and going through this time with us. Thank you everybody in the chat. We do plan to be live once more next week, Sunday night, 7:30 p.m., our regular time, for the Back to the Bible broadcast with myself, Jordan, and Reese. So we hope that you have a great rest of your night, that you have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you then on another live episode of the Back to the Bible broadcast. God bless.